Hey, how are you? Today I'm joined by Large. You may know him as one of the hosts of the Twisted History podcast, or that bald dude I ate a guinea pig with in Queens. Tastes like salty, dark meat from a chicken.
Yeah, it's a little stronger than chicken, but yeah, it's a strong chicken.
Today he's going to be telling us about one of the many Roman emperors who ended up being a complete psychopath.
That's right, Donnie. Today we'll be talking about Caligula. Do you know anything about him?
Is he the one who diddled little boys?
Well, I'm assuming that's a lot of them, but no. You're probably thinking of Caligula's great uncle and predecessor, Tiberius, who, we'll just say, liked to play sharks and minnows with toddlers in his pleasure pool. Now, Caligula did spend his teenage years living in Tiberius's sex palace, which could explain his later insanity. But believe it or not, Caligula was actually a well-loved and competent ruler his first 7 months in power. He lowered taxes, he returned confiscated property, and threw tons of money into gladiator battles to please the plebeians. But then he fell seriously ill, possibly the result of being poisoned. And after recovering a month later, he started behaving like an absolute fucking nutjob.
How so?
Well, for instance, while he was sick, a few of the senators prayed to the gods for his health, saying they would gladly give their own life in exchange for Caligula's. Then when Caligula did survive, he held the senators to their promise and forced them to commit suicide.
So he holds people to their word. Nothing wrong with that.
A little bit of patience here, Donnie. I'm going to get to it all. Post-sickness, his favorite hobbies became rolling in piles of gold like Scrooge McDuck, drinking pearls dissolved in vinegar, dressing in women's clothing, sleeping with his 3 sisters, and fucking cuckolding. The guy would attend weddings only to stop the marriage from happening so he could have his way with the bride first. He'd also throw dinner parties for all the senators, take a few of their wives in the back room for a little bang sesh, and then publicly rate their sexual performances in order to further humiliate and torment their cuckolded husbands. Now, aside from all this sexual debauchery, he was sadistically violent too. He wouldn't just execute his victims by quickly chopping off their heads. No, he would have them cut with a zillion small wounds so the victim would, quote, feel that he was dying. And he would also force families to watch the executions of their children. One time, he invited the father of one of his victims to dinner on the day his son was to be executed. The father was then forced to either sit and laugh at the emperor's jokes throughout the whole ordeal or die himself.
I'm getting big-time King Joffrey vibes from this guy.
Shut the fuck up, Donnie. Anyway, he ended up becoming so paranoid during his short term in power that the only living thing he trusted was his horse, Incitatus. He loved Incitatus so much, he built him his own house, complete with a marble stable and a troop of slaves. He even tried to make the horse his consul, which was the highest magistracy within the government, but the Senate refused. He was also known to have incredibly thin skin and head of hair. Being so ashamed of his bald spot, he passed a law that anyone looking down on him from a high place could be immediately executed.
If only you had that much power, Large, you wouldn't have had to shave your head.
You're out of your element, Donnie. Shut the fuck up. Now, similar to me, what Caligula lacked in hair up top, he made up for with way too much hair everywhere else, which he was also ashamed of. So much so that he made mentioning the word goat in his presence illegal upon punishment of death.
Kind of like how Xi Jinping banned Winnie the Pooh in China because everybody was saying they looked alike.
For the love of God, shut the fuck up, Donnie. Now, I'm sure it's already apparent this guy was a huge egomaniac, believing wholeheartedly that he was an actual god. Yes, most Roman emperors were considered gods after their deaths, but Caligula was the first to fully embrace deity status while he was still alive, having the heads of countless religious statues replaced with a bust of his own. Believing he was a god himself apparently meant he could declare war on other gods, as after a failed attempt to cross the English Channel and invade Britain, he reportedly declared war on Neptune, the god of the ocean, and he immediately pronounced himself victorious and ordered his army to collect seashells as war trophies.
Fun fact, Native Americans actually used seashells as currency.
Donnie, please, I'm almost done. Caligula's insanity eventually became too much for the Senate to deal with, and after less than 4 years as emperor, they stabbed him to death, just like they did with Julius Caesar. There are those who believe Caligula's exploits of sex and violence were greatly exaggerated, and others that believe his cruel and whimsical actions were due to a physical ailment, possibly temporal lobe epilepsy, maybe hyperthyroidism, or perhaps some disease called Wilson's disease. I have no idea what is true or not because we're talking about accounts from the 1st century, but I do know that after Caligula's death, Claudius took over, and Rome breathed a sigh of relief. That was until Claudius's stepson Nero ascended the throne 14 years later, and that's when things got even worse. But I am saving Nero for the next episode of Twisted History.
Wow. Wicked interesting stuff, Large. Thanks for coming on.
Whatever, Donnie. Go fuck yourself, and I'll talk to you soon.